this quarter, and UBS Warburg is downgrading the offshore drillers, citing a sharper than expected decline in drilling activity. So you can find one plus for every minus, but at least you are seeing some pluses in there, and that does help to stabilize things. And the futures...
Open my mic.
Yes, well, and the futures, as you open your mic, Ed, you'll find out that...
All right. Ray, thanks. We're going to have to break in here on WOR at 8:50, 10 before 9 o'clock because of what appears to be some sort of an explosion at the World Trade Center. Let's go to the WOR News Center. Joe Bartlett is trying to put together what limited details we have right now. Joe?
All right, Ed, good morning. Yeah, it's difficult to know what happened, but it is visible for miles. This is the World Trade Center with a tower on. I'm not quite sure which number it is, but there is a huge plume of smoke coming out the top portion of the building, as well as the north face of it, probably down about 15 stories. Now, there's a number of reports coming in, one of an explosion. People in the area have reported hearing a loud explosion, and there could have been anything. Something could have hit it, but it looks like there is smoke coming from the north face of the World Trade Center tower, down, I would say, about maybe 15 to 20 stories from the top of the building, and then more heavy smoke coming out of the top of the World Trade Center. A quick call to the police department a short time ago said that they said this just happened. They don't have anything more on it, so we're going to send somebody to the scene and try and make a couple more calls to see if we can get a little further information. But something serious has happened at the World Trade Center. Heavy, dark smoke continuing to billow from the top and the north face about 15 floors from the top. Something seriously wrong at the World Trade Center this morning. We'll continue to check it for you, Ed.
All right, we're trying to get as much information as we can here, Joe. As you pointed out, there's no suggestion of malevolence. This could be an accident. On the other hand, we can't rule out anything that may be sinister here.
No. All they heard was an explosion. We're getting a little better shot of this thing here. We're able to zoom in a little better. It looks like we have maybe, I would say, five floors involved in some sort of smoke condition near the top of the tower, and this is the one with the observation deck on it, the one with the big tower, the antenna there, and the smoke is now billowing out from all areas of the top of the building. Some of the windows on the east side have also been blown out, and smoke is coming out of there, so it looks like the entire top portion of that World Trade Center building is filling with smoke, and it is still pouring out at a very, very rapid rate.
All right, Joe, thank you. We're going to take a quick break here and then return, and we'll take this quick break and then give you an update on the traffic and the weather. But first, this commercial announcement, and then more continuing coverage here on WOR Radio of what appears to be a calamity at the World Trade Center. Stay with us. It's 8:53.
Buongiorno. It's Arthur Schwartz. Please join me to celebrate Italian style at WOR's Tomato Sauce Cook-Off. I'll be at the Meadowlands September 15th at the Italian Festival at the racetrack. From 7:30 to 10:30 p.m., join me as we dip Royal Crown Bakery's fresh baked breads into home-cooked tomato sauce from 12 contest finalists. Also, enter to win Broadway tickets and dinner for 4. Free tickets are still available by calling 877-WOR-2874. That's 877-WOR-2874. And remember the date, September 15, at the Meadowlands Racetrack. Ciao.
8:54 on the WOR Morning Show, and the latest update is we're getting reports that a plane may have crashed into the World Trade Center a short time ago. That's all the information we have right now. The WOR News team is working on the story. Let's get a quick look at the traffic in George Meade. George?
Yeah, needless to say, you don't want to go into Lower Manhattan area. When Joe was talking, you can hear the responding fire apparatus, so you definitely want to stay away from Lower Manhattan. It's already quite heavy city-bound at the Brooklyn Bridge and also the Manhattan Bridge and the Holland Tunnel, but do whatever you can maybe to turn around and leave your vehicles outside of Lower Manhattan. It's going to be a mess below Canal Street. Meanwhile, Lincoln Tunnel, very heavy traffic, a 45-minute delay. It's also 20 over at the Midtown Tunnel. So, Ed, this is an area that's very difficult to get to at this time of the morning anyways, but you definitely want to route yourself away from the lower end of Manhattan. But right now, West Street is closed, and the FDR Drive is about to be closed in the south end.
All right, George. A real quick look at the weather, Lisa G., and then back to Joe in the news center.
All right, it's going to be a nice sunny day today, high 82 degrees, clear and cooler tonight, low 60 in town, 50s in the suburbs. Sunny and nice again tomorrow, high 80. Clouds and sun Thursday, high 78. 64 and sunny now, 75% humidity. Winds out the northwest at 9. Head for a high of 82 at WOR.
Well, the time is 8:55. If you're just joining us, we have word that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. It's a spectacular sight. And our Joe Bartlett is standing by in the news center with some more details on this still developing story.
All righty, Ed. Yeah, we just spoke to one of our producers who is down on the scene there, and she has confirmed that it was a plane that crashed into the World Trade Center, and the debris has fallen down onto the street. She says there's a lot of police and ambulance activity on the scene right now. The question is just how much damage was done to the inside of the building, and, what's going on inside, because the very top portions of the building, of the World Trade Center tower, are just filled with smoke. Not quite sure how many people were in those offices, but there is a very large hole. Now, let me take a closer look at this thing, if I can zoom this camera in here. I would say at least 3 floors are involved in this hole. The hole extends for 3 floors, and it is, okay. I'm sorry, what? All right, who do we have on the phone here? Jim?
Yeah, Jim Leonard.
Yeah, hi. Jim, what can you tell us?
Well, we're sitting here. I'm on the 9th floor of the World Financial Center, right across the street from the World Trade Center, and it looks like it's the one World Trade Center. About a quarter of the way from the top, it looks like the whole left side of the building exploded out. But people are saying that now it was an airplane.
Yeah, well, that's what we have. Can you see down on the ground whether
down on the ground? Basically, there's people running around down the street, and then on the all the glass panes that are on the bottom part of the World Trade Center are all blown out.
Well, yeah, I mean that's a huge hole.
When I first heard it and ran over to the window, it looked like there was fire on the bottom floor.
Yeah.
But now it looks like that's all kind of cleared up.
Can you see from your vantage point how many floors are involved in this damage? It looks like, from my vantage point, maybe 3 or 4 floors.
Yeah, at least. And it's whole one side, and actually someone saw someone fall out of the building.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so it's really bad. People here, because we're all nervous because we don't know if it's a bomb or not, and we don't know if we're supposed to evacuate. So.
Well, no, we now know that it is a plane.
It definitely is a plane?
Yes, absolutely. It is a plane that hit the World Trade Center. The question is, how far did it go in? What kind of a plane it is? I don't know. But we can now see flames, and the smoke is getting heavier and heavier. So this thing obviously is far from under control.
Oh, absolutely.
Earlier, now we have debris falling out of the windows, and because what happened here, I'm sure that this thing happened so suddenly.
It did.
There was no warning for anyone on those floors.
Jim, what time did you first hear the blast?
This is probably easily 15 minutes ago, so it must have been 8:45. And
there's been no word yet inside the financial center at all.
I'm sorry?
But there's been no word from the people inside the financial center advising you to clear out or anything.
No, the management basically said if you feel more comfortable leaving, go ahead. But it seems like as more people hear that at the plane, that people are going to be more under control now.
It's 8:58, 2 before 9 o'clock in the WOR morning show. Jim Leonard, who happens to be my son-in-law, works at Lehman Brothers across the street, is giving us a description. Joe Bartlett, as you pointed out now, this is in the World Trade Center tower, which has the big television antenna array on the top of it, and it appears that there is heavy black smoke and plenty of flames showing from actually both sides of the building, where the plane seemed to have made some sort of an impact, almost as if the plane went in one side maybe and there was an explosion inside that blew out the other side, Joe?
That's what it looks like. It looks like, because we're not quite sure what kind of a plane. We're going to have to check with the FAA and find out which one was in the area. But it looks like it went in through the north-facing side of the building and then just kind of probably careened, as you might imagine. I mean, just imagine this thing hitting the side of the building and then going through into the middle section of the building. And then what happened? I think it's the west-facing side you have the windows broken out there, too. So this thing, who knows? I mean, it could have gone all the way straight through, or maybe that's just the result of the explosion. But as we can see now, the smoke is continuing to billow out of the top floors, and there was absolutely no warning for this to anyone on those floors. So I'm not quite sure who was on there and just how much injury there has been.
All right. Jim Leonard, thank you very much. We'll check in with you later. It's 9 o'clock now on WOR New York, along with Joe Bartlett in the WOR News Center. I'm Ed Walsh, and we're going to delay the start of the Dr. Joy Brown program this morning on WOR so that we can bring you continuing coverage of this developing story. As we've heard, and this is all unofficial at this point, at approximately 8:45, 8:40, something like that this morning, there was what appears to have been a plane crashing into the top of one of the two World Trade Center buildings. Joe Bartlett, do we know which, is this a Tower 1 or Tower 2?
No, it's World Trade Center number 1 with the big tower on it. And, boy, the hole, now, I'm getting a better view of this thing now, Ed. I mean, this hole is extremely large. And it's, I would say, I mean, in terms of percentages, maybe, no, I don't know, the top 20% of the building. And now we are seeing heavy flames inside, so...
And it's difficult to tell because of the way that first of all, the scope, the scale of the building is so huge, it's difficult for us to get a perspective from these long-range telephoto shots, but it appears that it's a lot more than 2 or 3 stories. George Meade is obviously as an aviator, knows something about the difficulty of flying around those buildings. Isn't, George, there supposed to be some sort of a restriction over that part of Manhattan?
Well, that's an uncontrolled airspace. You know, the top of the World Trade Center maybe is about 1,500 feet, and then it goes up another 200, 300 feet with the antenna. And whatever happened here, there is an unconfirmed report. It was a twin-engine plane. Now, even on a day like today, which is beautiful in New York, people will go up and down the Hudson River in this kind of free zone, which is below 1,100 feet, and maybe they'll go close to the Trade Center, close to the Statue of Liberty. So it's extremely unusual that they would get that close, and especially because it looked like it entered on the north-facing tower. And this is the one that faces Midtown to the north, so you wouldn't actually get the planes because you'd almost have to strike the building after flying over the island of Manhattan. Most of the aircraft will come up and down the Hudson River below 1,100 feet, so it's probably an aircraft that wasn't talking to anybody, talking to the FAA. It's certainly not a scheduled airline or anything else like that. And whatever happened is really most unusual. There are a lot of helicopters that fly around that building, but most of them know to stay clear because you also, even on a day like today when it's not very windy, but there is some sun heating, you get a lot of updraft, so you know not to get near the building. So it's a very, very dramatic sight as we look out here at the WOR studio window, southbound, but it is unusual. It looks like the plane entered the north-facing building, and that's not an area that people would normally fly over the city.
Now, this is all occurring just as people were going to work, evidently. You'll recall, what was it, 10 years ago approximately, when there was a bomb in the World Trade Center. There's no indication now that this was anything more than an accident, albeit a catastrophic one. But the World Trade Center at that point had difficulty getting people out of the upper stories because of the fact that they had to shut down the elevators when there's a fire, a serious fire, an explosion, anything like that.
Oh, my God, Ed, another plane just hit the World Trade Center. Another plane. It was a medium-sized plane. Unbelievable. It would look like, oh, my God, this is a deliberate act, Ed. This plane flew directly into the second World Trade Center. A huge flame and conflagration just broke out. Ed, I was watching this as we were keeping an eye on the other tower. This other plane comes shooting down the Hudson River right into the second World Trade Center tower. A huge explosion, and now we have both of the World Trade Center towers on fire. Oh, my God, I'm not sure what's happening down below. Hopefully the police that were on the scene for the earlier incident have cleared out things, but this was a huge plane, Ed. I mean, it looked like maybe a 737. Something very, very sinister has just happened.
Sure, Joe, this is
unbelievable, Ed.
It is,
oh, my God.
So now we have 2 buildings afire. One of our callers, Bill, is an eyewitness. Bill, what can you tell us on WOR?
Hi, I was coming south on the New Jersey Turnpike, and I was just looking at the skyline. I usually do. And as the other fellow said, this was a big plane. It was yellowish orange in color. And like he said, it was coming south.
Yeah, the other thing, I don't want to interrupt here, but we may have other planes up there. I don't know what else is going on. This guy just came out of the blue.
Right, and he didn't swerve. He wasn't trying to avoid it. He went right into it.
This was absolutely deliberate. And from your vantage point there, sir, can you see any other planes in the area? Because this may happen again.
No, there was no other planes, and it was a great big ball of flame, but it extinguished quickly, just like gasoline or jet fuel would do. That's what I do for a living. I deliver it. So apparently that burned off right away, and then the lots of smoke. And I didn't see anything fall. I believe most of this plane, if not all of it, went into the building. Nothing fell.
Yeah. Natalie Bedos, our producer. Let's see if we can get Jim Leonard back on the line at that number I gave you earlier, and see if we can get his perspective from across the street. If you're just joining us on WOR, this is absolutely a blood-chilling exhibition of what appears to be, and we don't want to jump to any unnecessary conclusions, but appears to be, Joe Bartlett, some sort of a terrorist, a deliberate, strike.
There's no question about this one. This was not a mistake. This was an absolute deliberate strike, and this was a huge plane. I don't know if you saw it, but it was huge.
This flew into the South Tower, so now both of the World Trade Center buildings are involved, and there's a spectacular fireball, which probably, as it erupted and went up the building, probably it covered what appeared to be 4 or 5, maybe even more stories. So now you have on the North Tower the fire that continues to burn from the incident that occurred about 20 minutes ago. These are all approximate times. This is the North Tower that has the big antenna farm on the top of it. And then just as Joe Bartlett was describing the scene a moment ago, the crashing of another plane into the South Tower, and there is now fire burning from inside the building and spreading up several stories from there. We don't have any word yet on what the evacuation plans may be, but the photography of the fire, this is absolutely a blood-chilling scene, Joe Bartlett, and as you say, you have to wonder who's behind this and what else may be up there.
To see that happen, Ed, right in front of your eyes was a harrowing sight. A huge plane just slammed directly in there, deliberately into that building, and it just burst into this huge flame. And as we described earlier, the number 1 tower with the top portion of the building on fire and billowing with smoke. Now the number 2 tower is even more scorched than that. I would say the top third. If you can visualize the World Trade Centers, they have those little segments because they built them in segments so that they would be 3 separate buildings as opposed to one tall one. On the south side, the entire top portion, the top 1/3 of the number 2 tower is billowing in smoke, and there was no warning for anyone inside the building. God help anyone who was inside. Now, oh my God, it happened again. Is that no? I'm watching television. Oh no, I just saw something on television. I thought it happened again, Ed. Oh my God.
It's very easy. Joe, you're to be certainly excused. I'm watching a live picture right now, and no, although, again, if you're just joining us here on WOR at 9:08, what is happening here is another attack on the World Trade Center, more than a decade after the first one, which resulted in 6 deaths and 1,000 injuries as a bomb was exploded, a truck bomb inside the parking lot of one of the towers. This morning, what appears to be 2 deliberate crashes of airplanes into the World Trade Centers. The first one in the North Tower, the one with the antenna on top of it, and approximately the top, say, 1/5 of the building, smoke continues to billow out of the building, dark, thick, acrid smoke and flame inside. And then that was at about 9:15, and then shortly after 9 o'clock, to the horror of people like Joe Bartlett, who was giving us a live commentary of the scene, another plane, described as being a large one, smashed into the other tower, just a little bit higher than the halfway point of these huge gleaming towers in Lower Manhattan, with a huge fireball, and now smoke is coming from the other tower as well. We don't have any word from the public safety agencies at this point about evacuations of the building. Obviously, emergency response must be taking place at the scene. Earlier, we spoke with my son-in-law, who works across the street at Lehman Brothers in the financial center, and he said that they were told in their building across the street there was no reason to evacuate, but if you wanted to evacuate, it might be a good idea to get out. Now, as you will know, the World Trade Center complex and the World Financial Center, that entire part of Lower Manhattan, is extraordinarily busy at this time of day. The opening bell on Wall Street is supposed to be in about 20 minutes, and that's only a few blocks to the east of where this horrific scene is unfolding. There is a huge transportation hub there. New York City subways, obviously, the PATH system, and they're all in the basement of the World Trade Center. And in a situation like this, you would have to imagine that they've had to suspend that sort of service as they try to get people out of the buildings. Thinking back to what happened in that first instance with the bomb that exploded in the Trade Center years ago, it was very difficult to get people out of the upper stories. And in that case, although there was some smoke in the building from the explosion, there was no fire in the upper stories. Here we have about halfway down in one tower and about three-quarters or so of the way up in the other tower, we have heavy smoke and fire. And it must be extraordinarily dangerous and difficult. And all we can do is pray for the best and hope that the worst doesn't happen in this terrible, terrible tragedy in New York City this morning on this a day that we'll remember for a long time. Joining us on the line this morning, Dr. Harvey Kushner. Dr. Kushner, a terrorism expert out at Long Island University. What can you tell us about this?
Well, you know, I see the pictures the same as everybody else. It's mind-boggling that you know, somebody on a clear day, I mean, you could look out your window, would fly a plane, you know, even a mistake in that area. I mean, it's shocking, to say the least. But, you know, it's early yet. I know about that as much as you do, but it seems to me that flight pattern that would take a 737, I heard one report, a 727, would take it into that area is shocking.
Well, and this was apparently two, Dr. Kushner, not
two
one.
planes.
Yeah. First one into one building, and then as we watched, the second one flew into the South Tower.
I mean, you know, it makes any kind of scenario pale. I mean, when you think of the explosion in that building years ago in 93, and then now this, I mean, two planes at once, the statistical odds against both of them flying into the trade towers on a clear day like you have today is just beyond my ability to even imagine that. So
lots of times, Dr. Kushner, lots of times there'll be some significance given to a date or to an event in history that a terrorist will try to keep alive with a card attack.
Sure.
Is there any significance in this day, September the 11th?
Not really. Not really in terms of you know, what you would think would cause this type of disaster. However, realize that the United States has been targeted by various groups over the years, and particularly now with Osama bin Laden, and there's been rumors that he's been looking to do something. I mean, in no way am I suggesting that this is related to that, but you asked me a question, is there a particular date today? I don't think there is for you know, targeting the World Trade Center, but there has been incendiary rhetoric by numerous terrorist groups that have pinpointed the United States. So I can't say that today is a watershed for the trade towers, you know.
Kushner, is there any reason to think that this would be anything other than state-sponsored terrorism, given the fact that it takes resources to come up with an airplane?
Yeah,
or in this case, with two airplanes.
Obviously, you know, this goes beyond the usual theories that are out there today. I myself included have talked about them, where you have one or two freelancers or one or two individuals who want to, you know, cause havoc against the United States. This seems like a well-planned operation, money, sophistication, if in fact it is. I could tell you now that we're talking about this in terms of what's the possibilities, but as we speak, I can assure you there is a massive investigation by federal authorities, certainly New York City, going on as we speak. I mean, this has to be, I can't think of an event in the last 20 years that would have caused the type of emergency dialogue that's going on now. And, you just asked me whether or not this is a date that's significant. I could tell you that our intelligence agencies are, at this point in time, turning pages upon pages as to what possibly might have caused this, if in fact it was a terrorist event.
This would appear to be not only stranger than fiction, but even beyond the scope of the most creative and hyperbolic writer of potboiler novels. To think that you would fly planes into both of the World Trade Towers, and that's certainly what it looked like happened this morning.
It's amazing. I mean, I myself have dabbled, in writing these different scenarios just for fun, a novel about what might go, what might happen. And, Fuel for Thought was the 2000 celebration. And, but I couldn't have conjured up this type of scenario.
Dr. Kushner, hang on for a second. Let me go to Joe Bartlett in our news center. He's got some late information for us, I believe.
Yeah, Ed, we have just received word that the New York Stock Exchange is being evacuated right now. That's just down the street from the World Trade Center. A lot of other buildings in Lower Manhattan also being evacuated, and that is a prudent decision based on what we have seen happen. You know what the World Trade Center vicinity looks like at about 9 o'clock in the morning. A lot of people still getting into work down there, a lot of businesses that start up beyond 9 o'clock. So there are probably a lot of people on the street. Not quite sure because we haven't gotten word yet from our reporters on the scene as to the amount of debris on the street, too, and just the amount of debris that fell when especially that second plane hit the Trade Center and just totally disintegrated. But the New York Stock Exchange has been evacuated. A lot of other buildings in Lower Manhattan also being evacuated right now. And Beekman Downtown Hospital is on alert for casualties. There is no way, unfortunately, that this happened without some loss of life. This is just, it is catastrophic. But we have no word yet on the number of casualties. But the smoke is continuing to billow from these buildings, and God knows how anybody in the affected area would be able to get out on such short notice, and given the amount of smoke and flame now coming from those buildings, Ed.
Yeah, Joe, you and I have been doing this for a long time, and as Dr. Kushner said, I've never seen anything like this. This is absolutely heartbreaking to see the extent of what must be a serious loss of life, and I'm not. And the fact there's a paucity of information. If you're listening to us right now and you're trying to get a television picture, you should be aware of the fact that most of the TV stations, and I'm guessing a lot of the FM radio stations, have been knocked off the air because they share that antenna. I have the ability to happen to see this on a satellite feed, and so I'm seeing live pictures, and it's just. It's an unbelievable scene. Back to Dr. Kushner, to Joe Bartlett in a second. We have another eyewitness. We had an eyewitness on the line. David Fry is with us from Staten Island. David, are you over in Staten Island now, looking across the harbor?
Yeah.
Describe the scene, if you would.
Well, the first plane was a commuter flight from watching the news, so I started watching it from my window, and all of a sudden I saw a second plane fly over New Jersey, Staten Island, and went right into World Trade Center number 2 into the corner. If you're looking at it from Staten Island, World Trade Center number 2 is to the right, and about the 70th or 80th floor went right into the corner, and just a gigantic flame and blew up right there.
And you said that the plane came from New Jersey.
Yeah, it came over the New Jersey, Staten Island, Arthur Kill area, and it just flew straight in across the harbor, straight into the World Trade Center.
What kind of plane was it? Could you tell?
It happened so fast. It's tough to explain. It wasn't a small plane, but wasn't a big plane either. It was kind of like a commuter-sized jet or something like that. It just came right over. It happened so fast. It's tough to tell you what kind of plane it was.
Yeah. David, thank you very much. It's 9:19, 19 after 9 o'clock on WOR. Natalie Betos, our producer. Would you try to get a hold of Jim Kallstrom, if possible, the former director of the FBI field office in New York and the chief investigator for the World Trade Center blast in '93. George Meade, can a small plane fly into, obviously it can, a stupid question for me to ask, can they get out of what is supposed to be controlled airspace and just do this?
I had mentioned earlier, before 9 o'clock on this catastrophe, that there is a free flying zone where you really don't have to talk to anybody, any FAA towers below 1,100 feet, and it's Hudson River corridor, so it's conceivable somebody could come up from New Jersey or Staten Island, even up from New York State, and come right down the river, never have to communicate with anyone at all. As a matter of fact, when it first happened, my knee-jerk reaction, as I said to...
George, let me break in here and go to Joe Bartlett. We're getting an unconfirmed report that it may have been a hijacked commercial jetliner.
Well, that's what we have, yes. The FBI is investigating reports that of a plane hijacking prior to this. So, I mean, if we want to stretch out these bizarre scenarios, because who would ever think that we'd be talking about this? This could have been, these planes could have been hijacked from local airports, could have been on domestic flights. God forbid that is the case. I have no idea where these planes came from, but the FBI is now investigating a possibility that plane, or at least one plane, had been hijacked prior to this crash into the World Trade Center. We told you the New York Stock Exchange is being evacuated because who knows what else may happen today, other buildings in Lower Manhattan, and also now the United Nations building is being evacuated as a precaution as well, and the smoke continues to billow from the World Trade Center. No word yet from the Port Authority, the operator of this building, as to the number of casualties, but this is just a very, very horrific scene, and it is a tragedy beyond proportion, really. I mean, to see this in front of your own eyes happen, it's just horrific. All right.
Yeah. Joe, let me, we've been trying to reach my son-in-law, who was across the street in the World Financial Center, unable to do so, but his wife, our daughter Erin, is on the line. Erin, have you heard from Jim lately?
I just spoke to him right after the second the plane went in. He called me and he said it's a U.S. Air commercial plane. He watched it go right into the second, World Trade Center tower, and he said his building was now evacuating. So I just wanted to let you know, I heard that people said they weren't sure whether it was commercial or not, and my husband Jim saw it. It said U.S. Air on the side.
All right, Erin, thank you.
Okay.
Well, I mean, these are obviously unconfirmed reports from, believe me, reliable, but not trained observers. Joe Bartlett, had you, because we'd heard American Airlines at one point, now
no,
it was U.S. Air.
I don't have anything. And, how about this for an understatement? We get on the wire service here that they've learned the FBI is investigating reports that 2 plane crashes at the World Trade Center are the result of foul play. I mean, there's no doubt about this. If you have 2 eyes, you know what happened here. This is absolutely sinister.
What else do we have regarding the emergency response, additional evacuations? You told us about the stock exchange being evacuated. Any claims of responsibility, anything from overseas sources? Reuters have anything on this?
No. As a matter of fact, I'm astonished that there hasn't been at least some sort of early word from the White House, at least a reaction that, we're watching this.
All right. But Joe, Mara Rubin is at the scene, our news reporter. Let's go live to outside the World Trade Center and Mara Rubin. Mara?
It is completely crazy down here. Everyone is walking full speed ahead, away from the World Trade Center. The emergency crews are just pushing everyone away. They're evacuating buildings. And when you just stand there, you just can't believe it. There is one big hole in the side of this building, and there's like little flames now and lots of smoke. And people that I talk to, they tell us it's a plane, it's a plane, and we've been hearing reports that it is a plane, but you do not see any parts of a plane, they're saying. And I got as close as I could. Right now, I'm still en route. I'm like 3 blocks away, and I can't see it. We're assuming that the plane is lodged inside the building. It's very frightening down here, and people are just trying to get as far away from the building as they can.
Mara, what's your exact location right now?
Right now at the DC-37 building, which is about 2 blocks away, I I'm having trouble with a lot of people down here getting service because everyone is trying to get their phones up and call home and tell them what is going on and that they're safe. Because a lot of people, this is scary. I'm just going to play for something for you. I don't see any wheels or debris. I don't see an active slip. Maybe the plane is inside. There's a person. Oh, my God. Okay, I understand they're talking to someone about what they saw and what they heard, and then all of a sudden someone jumped from the building. So people are jumping to their safety, which they think, from the building because they don't know what to do. It's complete panic down here.
From what story, Mara, did the person jump?
I can't tell you. I'm saying it's all the way up there. It is high. People are jumping.
All right. Mara Rubin at the DC 37 building in Lower Manhattan. Again, unconfirmed reports that one or both of the airliners which crashed into the World Trade Center towers, one of them about 45 minutes ago, the other about 20 minutes ago, 25 minutes ago, may have been hijacked, may have been on a suicide mission. Lots of speculation, lots of conjecture, very little in the way of hard facts, except that this is what is obviously becoming a tragedy of and a catastrophe of unspeakable, unprecedented proportions. Jim Kallstrom, the longtime top FBI man in New York City, a deputy director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the man who led the investigation into the World Trade Center blast in 1993, now a private security expert, is with us on the WOR line. Jim, when you see these pictures, what can you guess?
I mean, nothing like that would happen accidentally, in my view. If that is a second plane, I mean, that just certainly confirms that, in my view, that it's more than likely an act of terrorism.
Were you aware, even unofficially, through your former colleagues in the Bureau, that we were at a state of readiness where we anticipated something conceivable such as this?
No, I was not. But as I've said over and over again on your show and other shows, the notion of something horrific happening like this, we've talked about for years. The hatred that would end up in the blowing up of a World Trade Center, or the blowing up of the barracks in Saudi Arabia, or the USS Cole, and it's not something that is. It is shocking. Obviously, it's shocking, but it's not something that hasn't been discussed. We live in a very, very troubled world with a lot of hatred, and if that is what this is today, it's going to substantially change the way we do business.
And the way that we live, and one would think our sense not only of security but of freedom. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Jim Kallstrom, but ironically, the New York City command post that the mayor would normally go to for this sort of an incident or another calamity is located in one of the World Trade Center buildings.
Yeah, I never did think that made much sense when it happened, but that's correct.
Yeah. Joe Bartlett has a question for you, Jim.
Because none of this stuff, it's all, until it happens, it's all sort of out there in the ether, and then when it happens, it's all crystal clear.
Jim, good morning. It's Joe Bartlett. I mean, having seen this thing happen right in front of my own eyes, I am not only horrified, I am extremely outraged. And to me, I would consider this an act of war. This is a vicious attack on the United States, just as if they attacked a military installation. This isn't one or two renegades. This is an organized, in my opinion, an organized attack on the United States, and I think this requires some sort of serious retaliation. And I'd like your opinion on that. And I know you have to be careful, but I'm outraged, and this can't be allowed.
Yeah, first of all, just from the tiny bit that I know, and I'm long distance, and I saw this on TV momentarily. Unfortunately, we have literally hundreds of people that are probably not with us anymore, which is just a huge, incredible tragedy. But you're right. I mean, if this is an act of terrorism, and it certainly looks like it to me, this is an act of war. And that's why the TWA thing was such an important investigation, why the FBI acted the way we did in that investigation. Because if it was an act of war. And the consequences of that decision and not having to know exactly what happened and why it happened are really important. So you're absolutely right. And if that's the case here, and it sure looks like it to me, the first thing we got to figure out as a nation, and the FBI has to figure out, law is who are the cowards that did this thing, and how best do we protect further citizens and but how do we actually go after the people that did this?
So it'll be interesting to see what the White House says. I think we're expecting a statement from the White House shortly, but this is clear. I mean, this is going to be a significant loss of life. If these reports that we have that the FBI is investigating the possibility, I don't know if you heard this one, Jim, investigating the possibility that the plane, or at least one of them that crashed into the World Trade Center, may have been hijacked. They're talking about the possibility of a U.S. airplane that had been hijacked. Matter of fact,
Joe, let's go to the president right now. Here's the president.
But we want to come back to you.
Okay. Back to Washington after Secretary Rod Pace and Lieutenant Governor will take the podium and discuss education. I do want to thank the folks here at the Booker Elementary School for their hospitality. Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
All right, there you go. That's President Bush. I believe he's still in Florida. Yeah, he's at an elementary school in Florida issuing a statement confirming that 2 planes did crash into the World Trade Center and calling it an apparent terrorist attack. And I must say, Ed, you've heard these comments from the White House before. We will hunt down and find those people responsible. It never happens fast enough. And this one, you know what? I mean, there are terrorist attacks, and then there are terrorist attacks. This is just I'm at a loss for words to explain just how aggressive an act you have to take this when a plane that may have been hijacked with innocent lives on board is deliberately slammed into a building where hundreds and hundreds of people are just innocently going about their daily routine. Can we? All right, we have WOR's Mara Rubin is back down on the scene near the World Trade Center with the very latest from the ground level. Mara, what's it look like down there? It must be terrible.
It is a terrible scene. People are just walking down the street with their hands covering their mouths in disbelief. They can't believe it. And then you hear the sirens and people screaming as they look up at the building and see people trying to get out and some people jumping. Now, EMS is here, fire personnel, police, everyone's here trying to keep it calm and get everyone away from the building and keep it safe. But I did see someone jump. I did. And I talked to someone, and in her own voice, you could hear it, and she just lost it.
They gave themselves out of the building.
Oh, my God. And I'm talking to people as they walk by me, and I'm asking them how they feel, and they say if this is indeed a terrorist attack, which people are saying that it is, they're saying I have no compassion, and that the U.S. has to do whatever they can to stop this.
All right, Mara Rubin on the scene. We'll continue to get reports from her. And George Meade is telling us, too, that pretty much life at Lower Manhattan is at a standstill.
The city has come to a standstill. I mean, the 3 area airports have been shut down. The airspace over New York City has been shut down by the FAA. And now we learn all bridges and tunnels have been completely shut down. As a matter of fact, we're at 40th and Broadway here at WOR, and as I look west out to the Lincoln Tunnel, even buses are not moving into the city. So this has really brought this city and the whole metropolitan area to a complete halt.
And the New York City Fire Department is now asking all firefighters to report for duty. That's just how serious this situation is in the city. The New York City Fire Department asking all firefighters to report to duty. St. Vincent's Hospital in Greenwich Village is reporting dozens of injury cases, and they say, unfortunately, they are preparing for hundreds more. This fire is still burning out of control in both World Trade Center number 1 and number 2. And you heard the president say it's an apparent act of terrorism. In my opinion, it was an absolute deliberate attack. No question about that. And we are going to continue to stay on this story here at WOR, so stay with us, won't you? Ed, I do have one more eyewitness. This fellow's name is Brian Lutz. He was just a couple of blocks away from the scene.
The second explosion was so loud and so forceful that we felt the heat come through our windows, which is we are about 7 blocks north, and our upper floor faces the Twin Towers exactly. I can see the south tower. I can see about 70 floors, the upper 70 floors, and the north tower I see about the upper 40 floors. The gash in the tower is about 45-degree angle, and it's got to be 250 to 250 feet at about a 40-degree angle. And I can see with my binoculars, people are screaming, get out of the streets below me. There's tremendous confusion. All
right. That's very good. His name is Brian Lutz. He is on the scene there. As pretty much you heard from Mara Rubin. And Ed, we're getting, and I hate to do these unconfirmed reports, but since this is a breaking story and it's kind of tough to nail down everything, we do have an unconfirmed report that an American Airlines 767 jet out of Boston is I guess unaccounted for, or that's the one that the FBI is looking into, and in response to these reports that perhaps a domestic airliner had been hijacked and deliberately rammed into the World Trade Center. Oh my gosh, it's just a terrible.
Is George back there on the
news?
Oh, yeah,
I'm here.
George, if you would explain to our audience, first of all, we're all aware these days of how difficult it is to hijack an airliner, but there's the ability there's a device on airplanes, commercial and military airplanes, called IFF, Identification Friend or Foe, and with just a flick of his wrist, a pilot is able to squawk, as it is called, to transmit on that IFF transponder an emergency code which indicates a hijacking, a mayday, whatever. So even if the authorities, presumably, unless the person who hijacked the plane was so conversant with the avionics inside the cockpit, even if the authorities were alert to the fact that there was a plane in distress, or 2 planes in distress, if in fact they were hijacked, there's really no means to bring them down. You know, they have surface-to-air missiles on top of the White House. But New York City is not an armed fortress. New York City is the greatest city in the world, and as has just been proved here in the last 45 minutes, is vulnerable to this sort of a dastardly attack.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, these planes, obviously somebody knew that you could get into that area and get into unrestricted airspace where you probably didn't have to talk to anyone. But again, like you said, if a pilot threw a switch, but this is something we may never know. And right now, the FAA has shut down all of the airspace. You know, when you think about it, it's like an inverted pie starting on the ground and going up. And the other thing, Ed, virtually this island of Manhattan, you can't get off it now and you can't come in here. Everything has been shut down at the bridges and tunnels. They don't know where these explosions may even go on. Hopefully that is not the case. And the other thing is globally, I mean, everything is shut down, financial markets and everything else. We don't even know the extent of the injuries and the deaths that are involved in this.
The president, if you just joined us here on WOR at 9:38, the president said live a short time ago that it appears that the country has been attacked. And that's why this is an attack on America. This is not just an attack on New York City by terrorists. But he gave no more information on that. And then a grim face, that is, after offering a prayer for the victims and for the country, the president hurriedly left where he was in Florida, obviously to go to a place where he's able to get better control of the situation. Meanwhile, the New York City Police and Fire Departments, Emergency Medical Service, and others, Port Authority police who control the building, are trying to get a handle on the situation. As Joe Bartlett reported, the New York City Fire Department has issued a call for all firefighters to return to duty immediately. All firefighters to return to their companies immediately as they try to assess what is a calamity of truly unspeakable proportions. Ed, remember back in '93 where they had to bring ambulances and fire equipment in from Jersey and that was, there were 1,000 people hurt then. Joe, the number here could be,
no,
you can't count that high.
To me, Ed, this is much more severe than the World Trade Center explosion. As serious as that was, that was confined to the basement, the underground level of the World Trade Center, and the problem pretty much was smoke billowing up through the building. Those who were killed were just near the bomb blast in the basement. This, you have to imagine just hundreds and hundreds of innocent people going about their business when a plane deliberately is slammed into the building, and the building is just totally filled, the top third of the building, one of them anyway, filled with thick black smoke. And you do know that Governor Pataki has offices at the World Trade Center. He was in Manhattan when this happened, according to the governor's office, although his staff isn't saying where he was at the time. The World Trade Center is home to a lot of state government offices, and of course, you know, I'm not quite sure what floor the governor's on. I think he's maybe the 70th or something like that. However, Governor Pataki did have a 9:45 event at Club Presbyterian Hospital on Upper Broadway, so I assume that he was on his way to that event when this happened. Also, we expect to hear from Mayor Giuliani. He is scheduling a news conference fairly soon down in the vicinity at...
and that's where their emergency bunker is, incidentally, right, in the World Trade Center.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So, we're expecting a little bit more information.
Right. I can't imagine that they're in that facility. I mean, the building itself, you know what happens when you have this sort of a fire, they interrupt the ordinary utility services. Do we know off the top of your head, Joe Bartlett, approximately how many people work in both towers?
Oh,
I mean, it's 50,000 plus.
60,000 people work in both buildings. They're 110 stories high, and if you know anything about the World Trade Center, you think when you see it coming into various bridges and tunnels, and this is all in full view, because it's such a clear day here in New York that they're really right next to each other, but they're about 110 feet apart, the two buildings. So again, that's another problem too. This fire, which continues to smolder. As a matter of fact, Ed, I'm going to go outside on a parapet and try to give you a view here from 40th and Broadway. It continues to burn because it's also a very tough place to fight a fire. It's at the top of the building.
And Ed, we now have confirmation. We have confirmation from AP that the first plane to hit the World Trade Center was hijacked after takeoff from Boston. Now, that's the first plane. That one, if you recall, as we were describing the scene, seemed to have, compared to the other one, minimal impact, although it was a severe explosion. And if the other report that we had earlier, the unconfirmed one that may now be confirmed, that it was a 767 out of Boston that had been hijacked and slammed into the World Trade Center. George, how big is a 767? That's a substantial plane.
Ed, the first plane, you've flown down to New York from Boston. They're really almost small commuter planes, but a 767, I saw the impact of the plane. Of course, being this distance away from Midtown, I couldn't tell, but that's a substantial size plane. Was obvious from
767, yeah, is a large modern Boeing twin-engine aircraft. I believe only carries a crew of 2. But it probably has in the vicinity of 225 to 250 passenger capacity. That would a 767, if that's correct, would not be a shuttle type aircraft. In fact, the shuttle is obviously operated by Delta and U.S. Air, not by American anyway. Normally, a 767 would be a long distance airplane, or even on an international flight.
And, and we have another person to talk to. The former director of FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, James Lee Witt, was asked if...
wait, hang on a second here. We're seeing pictures that the Pentagon has been attacked too.
Fire at the Pentagon. Yeah, I do. All right. Yes, absolutely, Ed. We do. Oh my gosh. Yes.
My God. This looks like a coordinated attack here.
There is heavy smoke now coming from the Pentagon building. Yeah, I've got a live feed here on our television, and I don't have anything yet on the wire, but it does look like it did look like it does. That is definitely the Pentagon, and there is a huge ball of smoke just billowing out of the Pentagon building. Oh, so this is clearly a coordinated attack. I mean, if it isn't in war, it's war now. I mean, this is
clearly an attack on our country.
Entire country.
The Pentagon, of course, the world's largest office building. It is not a tall building. But it covers a huge amount of real estate. It is the head of the armed forces, of all of the armed forces. Is where the war room is located, where the president would, if not in the White House, would coordinate any sort of a response. Is open, having served in the military and having actually visited the Pentagon a couple of occasions.
I think
here's the president again.
Airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act.
That was the president earlier from an elementary school in Florida, Ed, and we do now have confirmation that it was another plane that crashed into the Pentagon. So the Pentagon was attacked, that too, just like the World Trade Center, billowing with smoke. And we do have the one confirmed report that a plane out of Boston, a commuter plane, was the first one to hit the World Trade Center. No word on where these other planes may have come from, but the Pentagon was definitely attacked. Now, I would assume, I think George Meade told us earlier that all of the airport activity has been shut down. So I think, but hopefully this is going to end right here.
Yeah, hopefully, and we're getting word now. A lot of people are calling in, and what they're doing is they're turning people around at the various bridges and tunnels. You cannot get on the island of Manhattan, and you can't get off it. So I know it's you might have to test your patience, but take your directions from the police. They're turning people around on the North Bergen Viaduct right outside our WOR window at the Lincoln Tunnel. So again, lots of frustration. As a matter of fact, people are even milling around. So this is a day that the city has come to a standstill.
And down in Washington, in Arlington, Virginia, very close to some of the most cherished monuments to our country's freedom, the Pentagon, the seat of power of the mighty United States defense establishment, the world's only superpower, is now enveloped in heavy smoke as we have reports that another airplane has crashed into the Pentagon. This is very close to National Airport in Washington, Reagan National Airport, if you're familiar with that area. So first New York, and now Washington, and one wonders if there's to be more. And as Jim Kallstrom of the FBI told us, this is from his perspective, obviously, if not state-sponsored terrorism, then must be the evil hand, the sinister hand of someone like Osama bin Laden, someone who has the means, the finances, and the hatred for this country and for our way of life. And as you said, Joe Bartlett, this has got to be considered to be war. There's no other explanation. And words almost fail you when you try to describe the extent of the damage. We don't even know about the deaths yet, the extent of the damage, but the violation of our way of life.
Well, this is absolutely, it's catastrophic, Ed. It's absolutely catastrophic. And the fact that the Pentagon was attacked, it shows that this is a coordinated attack on the entire United States. And if you remember, it was the sheikh that's in jail, Omar Abdel Rahman,
right?
Was he? I believe it was he and his cohorts who had plotted many years ago, I guess prior to or after the World Trade Center explosion, to hijack a number of American planes. I think it was this sort of scenario, but they were derailed somehow. So this thing apparently had been in the works. But now the Pentagon, this is just, it's an awful sight to see smoke billowing out of the two World Trade Center towers and the Pentagon on fire all at the same time.
The White House West Wing, that's where the offices are, has been evacuated, as has been the U.S. Capitol. This is one of those times when people are wondering, what should I do? Where should I go? And the best advice right now seems to be, don't go anywhere. Stay where you are. Stay safe. Stay undercover. As George has told us, you can't leave Manhattan.
As a matter of fact,
you can't get into the island.
Ed, we have just received word that no planes anywhere in the United States are taking off from this moment forward. No planes are leaving anywhere, any airport. So hopefully we are going to bring an end to this. Now, I mean, what happens if we have another one of these guys up there somewhere looking for another target? We really don't know. But there are no planes taking off anywhere in America today as a result of these three deliberate attacks. First on the World Trade Center 1, then number 2, and then at the Pentagon, just almost an hour after the first attack on the World Trade Center. As a matter of fact, it was 8:45, 8:45, when we first saw the black smoke billowing out of the World Trade Center, and at 9:45, we had word that the same sort of thing had happened at the Pentagon, so obviously a very coordinated attack on the United States.
I don't know about you, Joe, but I get the shakes.
This is war, Ed, and you know I'm appalled at what we're going to find out as the day goes on in terms of the loss of life. It is going to be dramatic, and you know what? With all due respect to the president, it's not good enough to say at this point we're going to hunt down and find those responsible. I mean, you got to get them and get them fast. This is, you know, it's just you want to strike out immediately, but you know, I think we have to know who we're going at. Can we go back out to the parapet? George Meade has got another look at the World Trade Center.
Before we do that, let's go down to the scene. Before we go to George on the parapet, let's go to Mara Rubin, who's down at Lower Manhattan. Mara?
I heard Joe talking about the smoke. The smoke is just billowing. It is just completely covering like the top 40 floors of the entire building. And down here it is noisy. We have so many sirens going off and people still very loud, and they're talking, did you hear, and what's going on, and people telling the story. What's really eerie is now the sun is the brightest it's been, I want to say, in 2 weeks, just shining right on top of the World Trade Center in this time where everyone is very worried and trying to find out what's going on. So I'm here live right next to the World Trade Center. I'm on Barclay Street, which is basically as close as you can get to the actual building.
Mara, have you seen any people being brought out of the building?
No, I haven't. I've seen lots of empty stretchers going out of the ambulances and being raced to the building. So I have seen that, but I haven't seen anyone being taken out. But I understand the mayor's going to be holding a press conference soon. So we hope to get all the details for you very soon.
Mara, is Joe, what kind of activity is on the street? They're obviously keeping people far, far away from this scene.
Okay, not so far away. You could go all the way back to Murray and Warren. People are standing by. No, I'm staying on forever. People are trying to kick me off the phone. But anyway, Murray and Warren are lined with people.
Are people trying to just get out of there?
People are basically out. They have evacuated the buildings of people working, but people are lined on the street. It's like if you were watching the Thanksgiving Day Parade, and no means do I want to compare this to a Thanksgiving Day Parade, but we have that deep of people lined up on the street just staring up at the building and watching all the activity in the street. We're talking a lot of activity, a lot of fire personnel, a lot of EMS. It is very busy down here.
Yeah, they probably can't go anywhere. Ed, we just have received word from the Federal Aviation Administration. They're telling WOR News that the entire United States is now a no-fly zone. The entire United States is a no-fly zone. No planes are being allowed to take off, and any plane in the air right now is being told to land at the nearest airport. That's how serious this situation is, especially now that the Pentagon has been attacked. Who knows what else could happen with planes in the air. So this is the United States, the entire United States is a no-fly zone. Planes not taking off, anyone in the air is ordered to land at the nearest airport. And let me repeat one more time, Ed, the appeal we had from the New York City Fire Department asking all firefighters to report for duty immediately. All right, can we want to try to go out to George now at the parapet? Or no?
Yeah, let's do that. That was George.
Ed and Joe, I'm at the parapet of the WOR studios. We're located at 40th and Broadway, just in the heart of Times Square, 23 floors up, maybe 300 feet in the sky, and I can view right from the Verrazano Bridge all the way up into the upper end of Central Park. It's amazing how many people are up on rooftops. I'm looking at construction here in Midtown that's stopped. Everybody's sighting down to the World Trade Center, and as Mara Rubin said, the smoke continues. I can see the flames on the South Tower, about 70 or 80 stories up, and a gentle westerly breeze carrying that smoke, kind of gray and white, some black, all the way across Brooklyn, out across Queens, out towards Kennedy Airport. The only thing I saw flying was a New York City police helicopter. I could tell by that color combination by the World Trade Center. And as I look west out towards New Jersey, no ferries, no Port Imperial ferries are operating right now. The city is shut down, and they're turning people around at all of the bridges and tunnels. You can almost see people out milling around. A lot of buses come in with a late run into the city, and there's very little activity on the street, so you're being made to turn around. And as I look down the side of the building, hang on here, as I look at Times Square, the crossroads of the world, you can almost count the people there. There's very little activity. It almost looks like a Sunday morning, and lots of people up on the roofs. And that's the view from the WOR studio just outside of 23rd story.
All right, thank you. Then back to Joe Bartlett.
All right, we just have a word from the Associated Press that the White House has been evacuated. The White House has now been evacuated. We've told you that the Pentagon has been attacked by a hijacked plane. They have now evacuated the White House. This, after the Secret Service received a credible threat of a terrorist act against the White House. How serious of an attack would that be? If this isn't enough to say that we are at war, the fact that the White House is the target of a terrorist attack right now. So I guess this is far from over, Ed. That's probably why the FAA is demanding all planes in the air get down immediately. So this is a no-fly zone. The White House is evacuated. You probably surmised earlier, the president, by the way, is in Florida, so he's not at the White House, but I'm sure the vice president and some of the cabinet members would be there meeting to determine what kind of a response there is going to be to these terrorist attacks against the United States.
It is 9:56, 4 before 10 o'clock in the morning on WOR New York. If you're just joining us, obviously we preempted the Dr. Joy Brown program this morning so we can bring you live continuing coverage of what, as the president said, appears to be a terrorist attack against the United States. No word yet on any casualties, but significant damage has been done. First of all, in New York City, where about an hour and 10 minutes ago, a plane believed to be a hijacked commercial jetliner, perhaps an American airliner, although that's not certain at this juncture, flew into the northern tower, the North World Trade Center tower, the one with the antenna on it, at about the 70 or 80-story level. Then, about 10 to 15 minutes later, a second jetliner flew into the South Tower, somewhat further down from the top, about a little beyond halfway up. As Joe Bartlett described at the time with a gasp, "Oh my God!" The fireball was hellish in nature. We have seen thick smoke pouring out of both buildings, flames showing. There may be part of the debris of one of the aircraft out. And then, moments ago, word that the Pentagon has been attacked. This almost sounds like fiction, except it's too frightening for fiction. The Pentagon is evacuated, heavy smoke pouring out of that building, which is in suburban Washington, D.C. The president, as Joe said, in Florida. The president, with all of the communications at hand, able to coordinate whatever response the United States may be able to mount from wherever he is in the world. So he is in Florida and presumably safe there. The mayor expected to have remarks here very shortly. New York City virtually isolated. No one being allowed into or out of the island of Manhattan over any of the bridges or through the tunnels, and a significant amount of the subway service has been halted as well. Now, Joe Bartlett's got more information from the New York City Police Department.
Well, what we have, Ed, is correspondent John Miller, who is, like the police guru. Everybody knows him from Channel 4. He sort of has an ear to what's going on with the police department, has some pretty good sources, and he's been listening to the police radio, and he tells us what the chatter has been like.
Right now, at the World Trade Center, the emergency units are reporting there's still debris falling onto the street on the east side of the building, including a second body which has fallen from the wreckage on the upper floors. They're also talking about people who are on the roof, and they've asked if the aviation unit from the police department can get up there and pick people up.
All righty, that's John Miller with what they're talking about on the police radio. And Ed, we told you earlier about the planes. There's a no-fly zone in the United States, the entire United States. Also, the White House is being evacuated, and we have just learned that, again, the White House has been evacuated, but there is basically now a nationwide terrorist alert. The Capitol building has now been evacuated. And
Joe, there's been another explosion now.
Oh, my gosh.
At the World Trade Center.
Oh,
this is on the right-hand side?
Yeah, oh, my gosh, the entire building, it looks like the side of the building has collapsed. Oh, my gosh, this is horrific. Absolutely horrific. How could that have happened? How could that have happened unless there was some sort of secondary explosion within those planes? Now, this, Ed, was the World Trade Center number 2. Oh my gosh, this is absolutely.
Joe, I can't tell from my perspective exactly what's happened here and how much of the building is still standing.
But Ed, it looks like the side portion of that building has totally fallen, and there is just a huge cloud of dust that is encompassing several city blocks. Oh God. What I mean, this would fall into the area of Lower Manhattan toward the eastern portion of the World Trade Center. It looks now. Is that? I'm trying to look. George, can you see? Is that building still there?
I can't tell. I'm outside again. I can see the north.
I don't see it.
I don't see the building because there's an awful lot of thick smoke. We had mentioned before flames and smoke. So you don't know if this was a secondary explosion or what have you.
George, it doesn't look like the building is there.
I can't see because of the thick smoke, so I don't know the answer to that, Joe, but it does not appear. And the only thing I can see is that police helicopter overhead. That smoke is so thick, it has now drifted off the lower end of Manhattan towards the East River.
We have just received word that the South Tower has collapsed.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
South Tower has collapsed.
You almost think there was some type of secondary explosive there.
Oh, I mean that's
and you have to wonder how that. Let's just think about this logically. A hijacked airliner.
The scene, Ed. I mean, it's horrific. Clouds and clouds of dust for blocks and blocks. Oh, I mean, people who were on the street near that building are definitely in peril. You probably can't even breathe right now, just given the amount of smoke.
Yeah,
this building is collapsed.
This smoke, Joe, is so thick. You're correct. The building has collapsed. That it has gone maybe as much as 8 to 10 city blocks. I can't see the top of any of the other buildings down there at all. That's how thick the smoke is.
Well, the point I was trying to make, Joe, is you wouldn't think that there would be enough residual combustible material inside the airplane or inside the building itself to cause the thing to collapse. There must have been another. It's pure conjecture now. Another device, and so you have to wonder about the first tower, and you have to wonder about any other possible targets.
Gosh, oh my gosh! I must say this is WOR New York. You're listening to WOR New York, special coverage of what is a catastrophic day. This is beyond belief that the United States could be under attack. The Pentagon attack now, the South Tower. of the World Trade Center has collapsed with enormous loss of life.
You know, Joe, as I look at it and you look at it on the TV screen inside the studio, two different types of smoke. First, that grayish-black smoke that was burning from the top of the Trade Center. Then I would say below 70 stories, it's all white, which means there's been some type of collapse and debris.
Oh, my gosh. This is terrible. And as we heard earlier from Mara Rubin, and I certainly hope she's all right, okay, we're just getting something else here, Ed. Police are advising people who live in lower Manhattan, such as Battery Park City, to try to evacuate as soon as possible, although...
To try to evacuate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they fear other explosions, but this debris and smoke, I'm not quite sure how far the debris has spread, but the collapse has encompassed much of lower Manhattan. If you want to sort of put a landmark in your face, you're facing lower Manhattan. You have the two World Trade Center towers on the west side of Manhattan. World Trade Center number 1, the one with the tower, the one closest to the Hudson River, is still standing, billowing from smoke. The second one has disappeared, or the top portion has disappeared in this huge cloud of smoke, white, black, yellow, and that sort of collapse is spreading toward the eastern and southern portion of Manhattan, and a huge cloud has just enveloped the lower part of the city, and
Joe,
God help anyone who is in that area.
You know, Joe, I'm outside the WOR studios looking out towards the Hudson River. There are some American flags. These winds are only about 12 or 15 miles an hour from the west, so you understand the impact of the smoke. Now the smoke is in Brooklyn Heights. It has swept across in the eastbound direction from the Trade Center.
We should point out that while we do have, is it confirmation that a building has collapsed? Is it that Tower 2 has collapsed?
Tower 2, yes. The South Tower has collapsed. South Tower.
The amount of smoke, as Joe and George have been describing it, which is billowed, reaches as high as does the still burning Tower 1.
You know, Ed, I'm very concerned about our Mara Rubin, who was on the scene there, and I'm not quite sure where her last report was filed from, but I know, Mara, I hope you're all right out there, and if you are, please call and let us know. Please call and let us know. I know it's probably a difficult situation right now, and you know your own safety is most important. But we're a little concerned about Mara, who was on the scene for us and reported there a couple of minutes ago. I do not believe she was very close to the scene, but what I recall what she did say, unfortunately, was that people were standing there watching this happen, and were not getting out of the area, and now the South Tower is collapsing. If I remember correctly, the South Tower, George, that's the one that faces the north. And
the WOR studios is kind of to the south and east, almost the closest down towards the east side of Manhattan. And as I look across the WOR parapet here in Midtown, there is nothing moving at the Lincoln Tunnel. There's nothing on the North Bergen Viaduct. We mentioned all bridges and tunnels have been closed. Everybody has been forced to go back to New Jersey or to Queens, wherever they're coming from. So we are trapped here on the island of Manhattan, obviously. No one can come in and no one can leave. But, Ed, it's an incredible sight. And you're talking about the extent of the smoke. I can just barely see the TV antenna, which stretches up to 1,750 feet on the north end of the Trade Center. And a police helicopter continues to orbit. I would say the smoke now, Ed, is up to about 2,000 feet, and it fills all of lower Manhattan and over into Brooklyn Heights.
Ed, we have reconnected with correspondent John Miller, who, again, has been listening to the police radio. He's got these frequencies, so he gets the inside scoop on what's going on there with the now collapse of the second World Trade Center tower.
I can hear them screaming, signal 1013, which is the police code for help, calling for help at the triage center, where other people who were already injured have been injured more, confirming that the building has collapsed. Dozens of officers, more civilians are injured. And we don't know, although I'd have to suggest, given the size of that building, what progress the evacuation was in of the tower that collapsed.
There's a possibility, too, that as that tower and the debris fell down on the neighborhood there, that it could have sparked some other fires. And again, I mean, I go back to what Mara Rubin told us earlier about people standing on the street. I mean, she sort of described it innocently as saying it was like the Thanksgiving Day parade, and people just lining the street watching this happen. And then, for some unknown reason, perhaps a secondary explosion, the entire South Tower collapsed. And let me see, I'm going to just check our wire. We're getting an alert now. Okay, well, they're just getting around to the story about the tower collapsing. But anyway, this is an extremely serious situation. Catastrophic, I think, would be an understatement right now. There are no words to describe the horror of this story and the deliberate attempt to take human life in such large numbers, and for what? For what?
Well, I'm presuming that we'll find that out at some point. This was obviously not the work of a single individual without any finances or means. It obviously required the efforts of at least several people, a substantial amount of money, influence, hate, a disregard for human life. This is one of those days that all of us will remember for the rest of our lives, and we can only pray for those who lost their lives today.
Just think of what has happened here. I mean, we had innocent Americans getting on a plane in Boston. The plane was hijacked and deliberately rammed into the World Trade Center, Tower number 1, where people had reported for work on a beautiful, beautiful September day, just like they do every other day. And within 15 minutes, the second plane, probably again carrying hundreds and hundreds of innocent people, slammed into the World Trade Center number 2. It with a massive explosion, taking, again, more innocent lives. People just going about their daily routine, trying to make a living, going to work, probably unable to escape given the situation in Tower number 1. And just as things were perhaps calming a bit, if they can be calm in this sort of a situation, people trying to escape because the second explosion happened maybe about almost an hour ago. I'm sure the evacuation was slow. Then the total collapse of the South Tower. I mean, the loss of life is monumental.
It is, and without being overly negative, overly pessimistic, Joe, I think you're absolutely right. This is absolutely a heartbreaking day for our country, and we're anxious to hear what the mayor has to say. We've only heard a few words from the president saying that it looks like a terrorist attack, but the Pentagon is afire, in addition to the damage here in New York City, which would appear to be the most catastrophic. The West Wing of the White House evacuated. We understand the State Department and the U.S. Capitol have been evacuated. I mean, the very foundations of our way of life have been threatened today, have been shaken to their cores, and this is not just a new era in trying to cope with terrorism, but in the way that we view ourselves, our freedom, our ability to, as you say, just try to earn a living. And God forbid that you mentioned our reporter, Mara Rubin, whom we've not heard from, and we will say this, if Mara's friends or family are listening, is the phone circuits are extraordinarily busy, and chance of getting through is very remote. We heard from my son-in-law right across the street in the World Financial Center, and I would love to be able to make contact with him again. People are being told now to, if you live in Lower Manhattan, to try to evacuate.
Right.
But for everybody else, sort of stay where you are.
Ed, they're also trying to evacuate all of Lower Broadway because of this recent collapse. And one of the tough things to do down in the lower end of Manhattan is to get people off that little finger of land. And I noticed when I was outside, I'm back inside the WOR studio, a small naval ship, which was probably docked over by the Intrepid, made its way down the Hudson River. They may have to do it by water to evacuate some of these people.
And we're getting additional word here that the second plane, the one that hit the South Tower of the World Trade Center, apparently came from Newark.
From Newark.
From Newark, yes. And
remember, we had that report from my son-in-law, and he's not a trained observer, but he told my daughter, who told us on there, that it was a U.S. Air. But you know, I'm not certain how accurate that is now.
I will never forget. I'll never forget seeing the sight of that plane, a very large plane, slam deliberately right into the middle of the building, and fire and smoke. Oh my gosh, it was absolutely terrible, and it has gotten worse now because the South Tower has collapsed, and God knows how many more people are in peril now as a result of the subsequent collapse. Probably additional fires, falling debris, and just that cloud of dust in lower Manhattan is probably enough to choke you alone.
Yeah, the different colors of the smoke indicate collapse. I mean, most of the dark smoke, which had been with us above the 70th floor, is still there, but everything below it is just white and thick, which would indicate. Now, you know, you've been to building collapses, both you and Ed, and they're usually like 10 or 12 stories. You got to think, this is 110 stories high. The metal, the cement, it's unbelievable.
So, George, you remember seeing what I saw was arc light strikes in Vietnam from 2,000-pound Air Force bombs. Nothing. The devastation was nothing like this. This is breathtaking.
Ed, you know what? It's 14 minutes after 10 here at WOR, and you know, you and I are sort of like venting here, and I'd like to give our WOR listeners an opportunity when we have them call at 212-391-2800. Give us their reaction to what they are seeing unfold before their very eyes, and perhaps they may have some additional information. Let me just pass on one more a bit of information we have now from CNN. They are reporting that there was a third explosion from the ground of the South Tower, and that is what caused the collapse. Now, that's from CNN. They're reporting that there was a third explosion on the lower level.
That's what I was trying to suggest when I posited that theory. Well, let's hear from you, particularly if you have some perspective, if you've seen some of this, if you can tell us what it looked like to you. We'd like very much to know at 212-391-2800. And as we get more information here, we'll pass it along on WOR. Still waiting to hear from Mayor Giuliani, waiting for more word from the president or other national authorities. But as George has told us, you cannot get into Manhattan, and you'd be advised, and I'm sure requested, to get off of the arterial roads that approach Manhattan, whether it's 80 or 95, 1 and 9, or from the east side, the LIE, the approaches to the Triborough, and the Harlem River bridges, because they're going to have to get equipment in here from outside of the city. There aren't enough ambulances. And they're going to have to bring them in from out of town, and there aren't enough hospital beds. They're going to have to take some of these people out to the suburbs.
Ed, we've reached WOR Shelley Strickler, who lives in Brooklyn, and who luckily is safe and out of that scene. So let's see if we can go to her. Shelley?
Yes, not so luckily, Joe. I really, tried to come into the city. Of course, we've always wondered what a real top emergency would be like. This is it. The bridge is shut. The subway shut. No way for you to get off your island. No way for me to get off my island. I was going to describe to you a few moments ago what I was seeing amazing streaming across the Brooklyn Bridge, only in one direction from Manhattan to Brooklyn. Now I can't even describe it to you. I will, but I can't see it now because the smoke from the World Trade Center is drifting across the bridge. I must tell you that I live on the 10th floor, and I face north. In other words, I face the Empire State Building and the bridges.
Shelley, I have to stop you there. We're getting another report from CNN of an explosion on Capitol Hill. An explosion on Capitol Hill, and police are evacuating there. This is absolutely unbelievable and unimaginable that we would be talking about what we're talking about today. An explosion on Capitol Hill. Police are evacuating Capitol Hill. Now, I would hope, given what had transpired about an hour ago, that the Capitol had been evacuated. And I'm sorry, what's this supposed to mean here?
American Airlines, it was Flight 11, they say, from Boston to Los Angeles, the plane that supposedly went into the...
The first one, all right, they're saying now Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles. I guess that was the first one to hit the World Trade Center, number 2. The other one, we have reports that that one came from Newark. The latest now, an explosion on Capitol Hill and police evacuating there. Of course, the Pentagon was hit by a plane as well. That is on fire. So a coordinated attack on the United States, and just a horrific, and I don't have another word, horrific, catastrophic situation in Lower Manhattan, where the 2 planes have hit the towers separately, and now the South Tower has collapsed, Ed.
We're ready to take your calls at 212-391-2800 if you'd like to comment on any of this, if you have seen anything. We're all in this together. This was not just an attack on the World Trade Center or on the Pentagon, or as Joe's just reported, on the Capitol, or on any other place that we may not know about yet. It's been an attack on all of us, a heinous, hateful, spiteful attack, and no one has claimed responsibility that we know of yet. We don't know what the United States intends to do to respond. We do know that our way of life today, and this is not, I think, exaggerating to say this, has been changed inalterably forever. We are still waiting to hear from the city what it is that they expect people to do, aside from what George Meade has told us is the request for people who live along Lower Broadway in that area and in the southern tip of Manhattan to try to evacuate if they can. However, George Meade, there's literally no subway service there, is there?
No, everything has been shut down in the world of mass transportation, at least south of that point. Nothing is moving above the surface, as Shelley had pointed out. I mean, nothing's moving on the bridges. I don't know if they're going to let you off the island of Manhattan, but our indication from the police and the authorities that it was not going to happen. But again, I can't emphasize enough how it has just brought everything to a screeching halt. You look out, when I was outside, Ed, you look out on Times Square, there's virtually no one even walking around.
Mm-hmm. And Ed, the Federal Aviation Administration has issued its first ever national ground stop. This is called a ground stop. No planes taking off anywhere in America. And all right, we're hearing now from officials at St. Vincent's Hospital. It's kind of difficult for us. We're doing the best we can, but the phone service is really, really sporadic right now, given the intensity of the situation. But we have heard from St. Vincent's Hospital that they are treating at least 50 to 100 people there, and what they're concerned about now is smoke inhalation. Mm-hmm. You have to be very, very careful about that, because the smoke is still billowing out of both of the towers and what's remaining of the South Tower. And, of course, the cloud of dust and smoke that came from the collapse of that South Tower has just enveloped Lower Manhattan. So that is going to be a serious health problem for people in that area. We're not quite sure what you could do about that. You just be very, very careful. Maybe put some clothing over your mouth and breathe through that or something. But they are urging anybody in that area that may be exposed to this situation to be extremely careful about smoke inhalation. Lisa,
sure.
Lisa, you have something else there?
Yeah, well, they say that there's a unidentified aircraft that's circling an airport in Northern Virginia that they're looking into right now.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, there we go. So, see, that's why I guess the Federal Aviation Administration wants everybody down, and that way they'll be able to pick out anybody who has sinister designs on the buildings around Washington. Now, this is near the State Department. They're looking for that plane. We've told you there was an explosion at the Capitol. The Pentagon has been attacked, and, of course, the situation at the World Trade Centers.
Yeah. And George Meade can confirm this, but Air Force assets in the Washington area, which can, and I'm sure they will, shoot down someone who does not land when ordered to do so. We don't really have that up here in the New York area. Ever since they, took away a lot of the assets at LaGuardia Air Force Base, that stuff just doesn't exist around here anymore. And I guess there are some Air Guard units upstate a little bit, but as bizarre as that sounds, you think of when the last time that there was a hostile act, a warlike act like this committed on United States soil. And I've just been trying to think back. Of course, after Pearl Harbor, there was, there were obviously about 2,500 American casualties on American soil. There were a couple of instances, I believe, in California during World War II, more accidental than anything else, when there were some people who were killed. And that's it. Other than that, this country has remained impervious to this sort of attack ever since that time, and all of that has ended today. To have seen what appears to be, we do have confirmation, Joe, that the South Tower
it's not there.
has collapsed.
It is not there.
Yeah, it is not.
I saw some views, and also we had mentioned before. You said you haven't heard from the city. Well, that's where their emergency bunker is, right, Joe? In the Trade Center. And the word now, as Shelley had pointed out, they're asking everyone, if you're listening on a radio at the office, anywhere, just to kind of casually, if that's possible in this kind of a day, to walk north towards Midtown or walk towards the west side, or stay away from, they asked you to stay away from the UN, but this sounds silly, but that's the only way you can evacuate that area.
All righty. Ed, let's go to the WOR line for a second. You're 212-391-2800. We have Kim, who's in Co-op City, who has a view of lower Manhattan, and it's just got to be an awful sight the closer you get to it, Kim.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the smoke. I happened to turn the TV on, and the news came across, and I happened to turn around and just looked out my living room window, and the smoke was unbelievable, and the explosion, the fireball, this is awful.
Yeah.
This is a real catastrophe. I mean, I can see, like, part of what's left of the other tower standing. This is incredible.
Now, Kim, from your vantage point there, how much of the second World Trade Center tower is still standing?
It looks like maybe a little less than half standing next to the other, because you can see both towers clearly from I live on the 20th floor. You can see it clearly from my terrace.
Oh, wow. That's absolutely, that's
it's very devastating.
It's an awful sight. Kim,
yes, it is.
Thank you very much. Take care of yourself. Ed, from Washington, we now have word of a car bomb explosion outside the State Department. A car bomb explosion outside the State Department. So, I mean, if we're going to take a tally here, we have two World Trade Center buildings attacked. Then it was the Pentagon. Then there was an explosion at the Capitol, and now an explosion outside the State Department. And I'm just getting word here that New York City schools are in a lockdown situation. So parents out there who are wondering about their children, take a deep breath. They're right now, they're in a lockdown situation. They're not going anywhere. And hopefully everything will settle down soon, and we can get the kids home to you. But New York City schools are in a lockdown situation, and I bet you can just basically forget about the primary election. That is not happening today. So,
and Joe, officially, the New York City subway system transit is shut down both underground and above ground. We'll mention again, all bridges and tunnels are shut down along the east side and the Port Authority crossings. The Tappan Zee Bridge is still open, and of course, nationwide, all airports are shut down.
Oh boy, oh boy. This is it's not over yet, Ed, and you know what? Unfortunately, this is just going to get worse and worse throughout the day as we get a closer look at the devastation that has been wrought on New York City and Washington and America in general as the smoke continues to billow out of the World Trade Center number 1, the one that is still standing, and the dust is still rising into the air from the collapse of the South World Trade Center building. It's just this is a day that will live in infamy.
Yeah, you're right, Joe. That's not overstating it. It's at 10:27 in the morning of this day, the 11th of September 2001, and along with Joe Bartlett, George Meade, this is Ed Walsh, the WOR.
Ed,
yeah, go ahead.
If only to settle one person down, we have made contact with Mara Rubin, our reporter. I know her mother called, and she was very, very worried, and as were we here at WOR. Our reporter, Mara Rubin, was on the scene just a couple of blocks from the World Trade Center, reporting for us on the situation. And then there was the collapse of the second World Trade Center, and thank God that she wasn't caught in that awful scene. So Mara is fine, and that's about the best news I've heard so far.
All right, that's good for, obviously, for the Rubin family and for all of us here, and that's good news. If you have, and I'm saying, is that Tower 1 coming down? Oh my God! Tower 1 has just collapsed. Yes, George, I've seen it.
I'm outside and at the WOR facility. We're at 40th and Broadway. I can just sight down. As a matter of fact, I just tried to flag inside to talk to Joe.
God,
and it appears that the tower, the other tower, has collapsed. I was mentioning off the air that there was a steady line.
Quick, we have Mara down there, George. Let's go to Mara. All right, Mara?
I tried to get into you quicker, but I couldn't. I want you to know that I was at Park and Church where everyone said to meet the mayor. I was standing there, then they told me to move, and I said, the mayor's going to be here. They said, no, we're expecting a third plane. And I said, what? They said, yes, no, get out of here. So I went, and as I was just standing then on a farther corner, it blew up. You don't understand. You heard this amazing explosion, and then it just crumbled like a house of cards, and then you just couldn't see anything. There was soot and smoke and toxic fumes, and your eyes were burning, and there was dust and ashes and the whole floor. And
Mara, what can you tell us about the collapse of the other tower? Did you see that, or you?
I heard it. I don't know if you have been watching the TV or not, but I interviewed the mayor, and the mayor was there with the police commissioner and Thomas Essen of the fire department, and they're all trying to figure out what to do and where to go. And we walked all the way from Park and Church to, I don't even know where we are, but in what they call a safe building. They were headed towards the federal building, and they said, no, we're not going to go downtown there.
Look, so, the view of lower Manhattan is just one of complete devastation. Dust and smoke everywhere, the entire lower portion of Manhattan.
Absolutely. I don't know,
smoke.
Did you get tape from the mayor?
No,
He's telling people not to panic. If you want to hear something, I'll tell you. I have it all queued up if you want to hear it.
Let's hear it, Mara.
Remain where you are. You shouldn't panic. You shouldn't worry. We're doing the best that we can to evacuate southern Manhattan below Canal Street. If you are in southern Manhattan below Canal Street, you should walk north and get out of southern Manhattan. And police and the fire need all of the room and all of the space possible to try to evacuate the people at the World Trade Center.
So basically they're telling you if you're downtown, try to get out if it's safe, and there are a lot of fire and police helping you get to a safe point. I do want to mention that what you said is true, that there's a lot of soot and ashes on the ground, completely covered as if it was grass. It's now brown sand covering the ground, and the fumes. I mean, before when you saw the fire, it smelled like smoke. Now it's something terrible, like almost poisonous, like you gag when you breathe it into your lungs.
All right, Mara, look, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to get a safe place, all right?
Uh-huh.
All right, just go to a safe place and just call us again from there. But I want to go back out to George Meade, who was on our parapet and watched as that number 1 World Trade Center collapsed just a short time ago. George, it's almost indescribable.
It is. There's no textbook for any of us here on the radio at WOR to figure out just what to say. And Ed and Joe, I was outside. We were prepared to talk about the smoke that was around, and I saw that line, kind of a line of flames, maybe 2/3 of the way up. was all smoke. This was the North Tower. We already know that the South Tower collapsed. And all of a sudden, I didn't see the TV antenna, which stretches up to 1,750 feet. It was sticking up through the smoke, and then it just wasn't there anymore. And that smoke, which is very thick, again, it's on West Street. The west side of Manhattan by Battery Park City is so thick it goes across. I can see Park Row and City Hall. I can see the New York City's telephone company building at Pearl Street, and it goes right across to Brooklyn Heights. And the only thing visible, there are 2 police helicopters. One is outside the Lincoln Tunnel up here on the Hudson River, about 600 feet, and 2 of them now are circling the World Trade Center. So, Joe, indescribable. First, I thought that actually seeing the plane go into the building, but it's an unusual view as you look south. There's nothing but smoke, and 2 buildings are gone.
Ladies and gentlemen, the World Trade Center buildings are gone. The World Trade Center buildings are gone. They are ashes. And it is a situation beyond description. I have received word that there are now F-16 fighter jets in the area, removing all aircraft. So hopefully we can put a stop to this idiocy, this maniacal act that is going on. And the scene... Ed, from our vantage point here at 40th and Broadway, and you can look outside the parapet, lower Manhattan is nothing but a cloud of dust. I never thought I would see anything as horrific as that. Natalie Betos, who has been manning the phones here. Natalie, do you have something?
We had an interesting observation from someone here.
Natalie, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We got her.
Can you hear me? There's been an interesting observation that it seems that every time we're getting a report of an explosion, Pentagon, towers, they've been on the 15-minute mark every 15 minutes.
That's right.
So it is speculation, obviously, but it seems to be routine. Every 15 minutes we're getting another report of another explosion.
Well, let's hold our breath for the next 15 minutes. Oh, by the way, I do want to correct something. I think earlier we had a report... what was it? The Capitol? Was it the Capitol? That one was not. That was
right.
Not,
that didn't pan out.
That was not hit. No explosion on Capitol Hill. But there was one at the State Department. There was a car bomb at the State Department. Of course, the plane that crashed into the Pentagon, and the indescribable scene in Lower Manhattan with the disappearance of the World Trade Center towers in a cloud of dust. The loss of life. I mean, I think of people that I know that work at the World Trade Center, and you know there was no time to get out of there.
Joe, I'm just outside here looking down at Times Square. More people now here in Times Square than maybe 30 minutes ago, 60 minutes ago. So it's obvious that businesses are closing here in Midtown. I don't know where you're going to go. The subway system has been shut down below the ground, above the ground. We do see some Port Imperial ferries running from the Manhattan side to the Jersey side, but all of your bridges and tunnels are shut down. So even if you're closed, your business, and you're thinking you're going to get someplace where maybe quote-unquote safe, although there have been no problems here in Midtown, you may have problems getting to where you're going. I don't care whether it's out Long Island or Queens, and boy, as I look down, Joe, no World Trade Center, either building, the smoke now and the debris billowing up to maybe 2,000 feet, and those winds out of the west carrying it right across Lower Manhattan to Brooklyn Heights.
We're still waiting to hear more from Mayor Giuliani, but as you heard from what Mayor Rubin played, a brief piece of tape that she aired back for us a moment ago, the mayor said, try not to panic. They're doing the best that they can. And again, if you are in southern Manhattan, you're being asked to leave where you are, safety permitting. What's next? We don't know. Certainly to have seen the second plane hit the second tower was mind-bending. Then the explosion that brought down, and it was another explosion believed to be closer to ground level, that brought down that tower, and you thought nothing could get worse. And then a few minutes ago, as Joe and I were talking on the air with George, the first building just apparently vanished. The perspective we have is distant enough, and the television pictures are far enough away that it's difficult for us to tell exactly what happened. But this is a tragedy of historic and truly frightening proportions. And Natalie's advisory about the every 15 minutes is something that gives us great pause. I know that a spokesperson from the St. Vincent's Hospital, which along with the New York Downtown is among the closest medical facilities, said that she was surprised that there were fewer ambulances, and that was before the building collapsed. Now we're seeing some late pictures of the results of the collapse of the second building, and there are people covered with dust staggering away in that part of Manhattan. If you know where that bridge is that runs over West Street to, is that Stuyvesant High over there, George Meade? Is that where it goes over toward the One Financial Center, right across West Street? That's where a lot of the dust is billowing up the street along the Hudson River.
Ed, this is George Meade. I'm just outside the WOR studios. All of a sudden, I'm looking down towards the Trade Center. You'll have to excuse me. I had my headset off. I didn't hear your question. But all of a sudden, there's a thick column of black smoke coming up in the middle of this white smoke. The black smoke is what we originally saw when there was a fire. Also, Joe mentioned the F-16s. I have not seen any jet activity. And, of course, at 40th and Broadway, where WOR is, we're very close to the Empire State Building. I'm looking at that right now. Doesn't look like there's any activity at all around. Normally on a tourist type of day with good visibility, be people walking around, but there's no one up on the upper observation tower. But the one thing is definitely sure, a lot of businesses are closing, even here in Midtown, and people are walking. But as we said, the subway system is shut down. The only thing I see running is the Port Imperial Ferry, which takes you back and forth in New Jersey. All your bridges are shut down, so it's going to be a problem even getting people off the island of Manhattan that are here in the Midtown area.
You're listening to WOR live coverage here at 10:38 in the morning on this Lower Manhattan, largely obscured from the distance by a cloud of smoke of various colors. Black smoke from still combustible materials, and white smoke, and brown-colored or ochre-colored smoke, and dust from the results of the World Trade Tower collapses. Frankly, we haven't been able to get close enough to know how high those buildings are standing, if at all. It's tempting to say that they've come down, but frankly, we don't really know that yet, do we, Joe Bartlett?
Well, I'm sorry, what was the question, Ed?
But we don't know the extent of whether these buildings have collapsed at ground level or halfway up, or we just don't know.
No, I mean, we spoke to one of our callers who was in Co-op City, who had a pretty good vantage point, and she said that it was down fairly close to the ground. And let me just pass. I got a couple more things here that we've accumulated. The planes involved in these attacks are unfortunately domestic flights that have been hijacked. And the first was an American Airlines Flight 11. It was from Boston to Los Angeles, and that was the one that crashed into World Trade Center number 2. The second one, I believe, came from Newark Airport, and then there was another one about an hour later that crashed into the Pentagon. This whole episode, Ed, transpired within almost an hour, 2 hours. At 8:45, we're at 10:45, and look at what's happened in 2 hours. And Lisa G is telling me the election is canceled, but there was no way that was going to happen today. This is just a very here's another one, a flight from Pittsburgh, another one hijacked, but what that's
there's a plane down in Pennsylvania.
All right, and we're hearing there was a plane down in Pennsylvania too. So this is just going to get worse as the day goes on, and just the thought of the people in the World Trade Center. I mean, it was bad enough this morning at 8:45 when we first saw one plane hit it and the second plane, but then to have the entire buildings collapse. I just pray an evacuation, a rapid evacuation of those buildings, or as best they could, because there has to be a significant loss of life here, and this is just terrible.
Well, the emergency service workers who had been outside of the World Trade Center buildings, even as other people were being told to get away, when the first tower, Tower 1, collapsed, that was the second building to come down, as described by one reporter at the scene, perhaps the top 40 or 50 stories collapsed. And then the metal skeleton sheared off and tumbled to the ground. There was an ensuing almost explosion, almost a tidal wave of smoke and debris that came billowing up West Street. That's the perspective that I had. And we've seen some fire department firefighters and others come out coughing, hacking, and just glad to be alive. The entire southern end of the island now enveloped in this smoke.
And CNN is reporting right now that part of the Pentagon has also collapsed as a result of the explosion from a plane that crashed into the Pentagon. But that was about an hour ago, and these things have happened. I almost want to hold my breath. These things have happened every 15 minutes, and we're at 10:43 in the morning. So I don't know if this lunacy is over. We're gonna find out. They have evacuated the United Nations. So, I don't want to speculate on perhaps other targets.
Joe?
Yes, Ed?
Just outside here on the WOR radio parapet, which is on the 23rd floor at 40th and Broadway, and we mentioned how many people are on the street as opposed to 2 hours ago. We're just off Times Square. People are milling around because they can't get transportation home. The subway system is shut down, the entire subway system. The only activity we see in the air are those two police helicopters, which interestingly enough are going higher and higher. The smoke now up to 2,000 feet. And Ed, you were asking about the buildings. It's obvious that the smoke, as it clears towards the ground, two buildings are not in evidence. As I sit and look at what is the outline of half a moon just over Midtown Manhattan, I just heard the roar of two F-16s going over Manhattan, which is a very unusual sight. And that was the only sound we had because aviation-wise, the entire nation has shut down airspace.
Ed, let me just raise up one point that Al Randall, our engineer, brought to mind. This is September 11th.
Mm-hmm.
Number 911. How ironic is that? September 11th.
Yeah.
911. Yeah. United States under attack.
It is, and we asked Professor Harvey Kushner of Long Island University. God, it seems like a lifetime ago, Joe, but it was after the first airplane attack on One World Trade Center. That was the first time, and he said he could not think of a specific tie-in to a day in history that this might have been a hatch to commemorate or to amplify or to have the rest of us remember. I guess 911 will do as well as anything.
Who knows? But I mean, I said it earlier, and this is a day that will live in infamy. This is one horrific day, and given the enormity of the situation, the organization of these attacks, Ed, this is not one lunatic. And right away we're going to think Osama bin Laden. Maybe Osama bin Laden is behind this, and if he is, then he's going to get it. But you know what? It isn't one man. It isn't Osama bin Laden and a couple of cronies that he may have some in some desert somewhere in northern Africa or wherever. This is an organized attack at the United States, and it's got to be state-sponsored terrorism. There has to be some other complicity with other nations of the world. This isn't one lunatic with a lot of money doing anything on the scale that we are seeing unfold before our eyes here in New York and around the nation.
You're right, Joe. This is when the instinct for bloodlust, for retribution, is extraordinarily strong. And imagine how the people who've lost family members.
You know how I am. I mean, you and I argue all the time about, remember the attack on the Cole, and you were ready to strike Osama bin Laden, and you know what? I wish they had listened to you and done this.
Yeah, well, hindsight is obviously is 2020. But I think you're right. This is obviously the evidence of a well-coordinated and much larger conspiracy, and whatever reservoir of sympathy the evil villains who perpetrated this outrage may have had in some quarters, I would think that virtually any God-fearing person would have lost for them for this absolutely heinous assault on the United States of America and on New York City, the most important city in the world.
Here we go, Ed. Another bit of information. We now are receiving word that there is a hijacked 767 jet that was hijacked out of Pittsburgh, now circling in North Virginia. Somewhere in northern Virginia, I would assume that would be on the outskirts of the Washington, D.C. area. It is a hijacked plane out of Pittsburgh. God be with the people that got on planes this morning, just going to a business meeting, getting on a plane out of Pittsburgh, out of Boston, out of Newark. God be with the people that went to the World Trade Center, decided to go early. It's a beautiful day. I think I'll go to the office early, maybe get out early on a wonderful September, a beautiful sunny day, and we need prayer.
We do. We also had that report of a plane being down, a plane believed to be a large plane near Pittsburgh at the Somerset County Airport, and you wonder if that was a hijacking attempt that went awry or it was completely unconnected. I will say this, that the Air Force will bring down that plane that is circling if it won't land, and if it means that they have to sacrifice the people who were aboard the plane, then they'll do that in order to protect whatever targets on the ground may be in danger, and they would be virtually anything in Washington, D.C., obviously.
I want to point out to those people in the New York metropolitan area that may be trying to watch some of this on television. You're not going to get it on television, so stay by your radios, because the television antennas, the television broadcast antennas, are all on top of the World Trade Center tower. So, well, they can find it on. But most of the television has been knocked out. You can get it, I guess, through satellite dishes, but your best source right now is radio, so stay with us. We're going to give you as much information as we can gather, and we will bring you the latest when the mayor talks again, perhaps the governor. I'm sure the president's going to have something.
The point is, the mayor's actually, as Mara had said, looking for a location to go to that is relatively safe. Now, WOR is shut down there at 40th and Broadway. And I said to one, where are you going to go? He said, I'm just going to walk north to Central Park. You can't get off the island. Just talking to my daughter, works over at Condé Nast, same thing. They shut down. The streets are just packed with people. There's very little vehicular traffic. People are just walking all around because subway service has been shut down.
So basically, we have how many millions of people we have in the city? 13 million people that come in here to do business every day, stuck here right now. And unfortunately, among that 13 million, there are going to be casualties as a result of the devastation wrought in Lower Manhattan with the destruction of both of the World Trade Center towers.
Right, and it's amidst all the other emotions that we have this morning at this moment, anger and sorrow and abject sadness and outrage, is fright, because we don't know what might be next. If remember. And thanks to the FBI, the aborted plot to blow up the Lincoln Tunnel and the Holland Tunnel and drop the George Washington Bridge and one police plaza and the FBI headquarters. Well, are they targets? The United Nations? Who knows?
They may not be done. The people behind this coordinated attack may not be done, and we have word from the Associated Press that a large plane has crashed in western Pennsylvania. I think that's the one you talked about. Yeah, Somerset County Airport. It went down just north of the airport, and that's is southeast of Pittsburgh. And according to the officials, the FAA and the government officials that we have been talking to, there still could be more missing planes. I'm sure they are frantically trying to account for every single aircraft because the United States has ordered a complete ground stop